is starting with the knowns, what you like. And so it's like I didn't have to completely abandon numbers. So the fact that marketing still encompassed that, checked that box for me. But in addition, it kind of took it to the next level by like adding the marketing and the creative piece and learning all the aspects of how marketing works. Even at the time, I didn't know what I was going to do with that degree, right? I didn't know at that time. I was like, oh, I'm going to be a marketing director. I didn't know what I was going to do with the degree. I just knew at that moment it was the perfect match of my skill set, my passion, and things that I love and I feel like I was good at doing.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to Season 2 of Tech Pathways, Stories Behind the Scenes. We're so excited to be back for Season 2 after an incredible first season. My name is Jose, CEO and President of Zeta, and today we're kicking off the season by talking to April Watkins, a partnerships builder, entrepreneur, and marketing strategist whose journey has spanned startups, Google, YouTube, and Web3. Often called the brand whisperer, April has worked closely with global brands like Coinbase, Walmart, Dropbox, and even Uber, while also pursuing her own entrepreneurial ventures. In our conversation today, we're going to talk about April's upbringing in a close-knit Boston family and how that shaped her values, how her early pivots in college led her to marketing, and her experiences building businesses and navigating tech, and the lessons she's carrying forward as she helps pave the future for the next generation of leaders in her industry. April, it is so good to see you. I know that we have been planning this kickoff to the season for a little while now, and we could not be more excited to have you as our first guest. How are you doing?
Great. I'm doing great.
Yeah,
How are you
we
doing?
are. Truly, I am so excited. One, because this is the kickoff to our new season, but two, because I've been wanting to talk to you ever since we ran into each other in DC a few months back. Time flies, and we got a really good conversation to dive into today. Um, where are you calling in from, if you don't mind me asking?
I am calling in from Atlanta, Georgia,
Ooh.
with the beach.
Nice, very nice, awesome. I'm sure the weather is nicer there than it is in DC. It is very rainy here today. Um, we are going to talk about a lot today, but as per usual, we want to start by taking it back a little bit and talking about origins and roots. We've found over the first season that this is one of those areas that really helps shape individuals. I think it's very understated how much our early years shape us as individuals and leaders. So we're going to get into that if you're ready to dive into the conversation.
Yeah, let's go.
Awesome. So the first thing I want to kind of dive into with you is you grew up the youngest of five. Amazing. I'm the youngest of four. I can't imagine another one on top of that. And you grew up in a faith-centered Boston family. How would you say that that environment as the youngest and in that family dynamic shaped your both worldview and maybe identity early on?
Yeah, so yeah, like you said, I grew up in a close-knit family. Both of my parents in the house, faith-based. It's where the foundational work took place, right? Is in the home. It's like my safest place to be in the world, and a lot of my core values came from being in that environment. So, when you think about respect, right? Seeing, my mom kind of take care of the family, the home, raise us, kind of discipline us, but at the same time reward us. Like it was just a mix of everything, but we got it all at home. And so these things like, feeling love, feeling peace, feeling joy, discipline and, sorrow and, sad things would happen, but being able to have that family unit around me to experience all those things and learn how to navigate those things from my, even young perspective. I consider these things like tools that I keep in my backpack as I go out into the world. So it's like, my baseline and my foundation is there. So it helps me make good decisions. It helps me know what's right from wrong, even though I may not explicitly know what's involved with each decision. It's like, okay, like I know this is not the right thing to do, but and I could still make that choice, right? I still may want to do that, or I won't. I just didn't want to be caught off guard or wasn't able to be caught off guard because of the unit that I had at home.
Yeah, that's so valuable, and I think large families are great, in part because you have so many points of reference, right? As someone who is also the youngest, I think like I'm always kind of curious to understand the dynamic of other youngest siblings. And so I'm kind of curious, you're kind of a self-described shy kid, or you were a shy kid, and you talk about kind of finding your refuge in two things that at the surface are not very similar, books and sports. And that resonates. I feel like I always kind of like lost myself in reading, and in kind of my schoolwork around the craze of having a whole bunch of older siblings, and also was kind of a sports kid. What do you think kind of like made you seek that space there for yourself? Because this is like, I'm kind of looking in a mirror right now.
Yeah, no, I'll give you a little bit of my family dynamic. So I have 3 older sisters. We're probably about maybe 15 years apart. Don't get me lying, but we have the three older sisters who are older, and then it was me and my brother, and we're close to age. We're about 2 years apart, and he is older than me. And so growing up, he was a trouble child. He would get in trouble a lot, like just, behavioral things. But he was, a lot of energy, probably had like ADHD and stuff, but my mom refused to put him on medication. She was just like, no. But she would have to leave work to like get him from school for like being distracted. So a lot of attention went to him. And so in that, I think that's kind of where the shyness came of like, I don't want to, be an extroverted, right? So I'm going to be nice. I'm going to be the good one. I'm going to listen. And then me and my brother also had like a fun relationship. I think that's also where the sports part came from. He is my inspiration. He played football. And there was a point where I wanted to be a tomboy, or was a tomboy. So I was playing basketball, outside with the boys. And that's kind of where the sports part started. But again, me being, more shy and quieter made me observant. And like made me kind of, tune into like my inner self. So I feel like even today I know myself very well. And so when you're in that inner space, reading would put me in other worlds that like wasn't visible to my eyes. So again, like home was great, but it was just like beyond that, right? Like it kind of played on my imagination of like, oh wow, like, reading Harry Potter, like, oh my God, this world, like, this is before the movie came out. So you really would read the words and kind of put the image together for yourself. And I would really get lost in it. Like I would read, a few pages and then like blink and like, oh wow, like I'm still like a human on earth, right? Just really dousing myself in that world. And so with that and what I found with reading over time, which I enjoy about it, is that it allows me to completely remove myself from, what is going on. So if I'm stressed or trying to just give my brain a rest, right, I can literally just focus on reading the words on the book. Like, for example, if I'm watching TV, I can like be playing a game on my phone. If I'm, playing a game on my phone, my mind is like wandering. It doesn't matter what I'm doing. If I'm doing something else, my mind's wandering. But something about reading and the actual act of reading and your brain kind of working with that information, it doesn't allow my brain to think about other things. So that has always been the fun part for me in creating those worlds and believing beyond like what I can see, and knowing that there are other possibilities. But yeah.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Is it safe to assume that you're also really good at tuning out noise then? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I feel like that is a superpower. And like, to your point, reading is one of those things that like you have to focus. Otherwise you read a page and you're like, what did I just read? And you have to go back. Like there's no half reading, right? And so it is one of those more like meditative things, when like your mind can like wander. But I've found that like with the noise of a lot of other people in the home, you do get really good at tuning people out. And like sometimes if I'm really watching something or reading something or whatever, just hyper focused, you could be talking to me right here and I can't hear you. I really genuinely can't hear you. And that is also, I think, a superpower of growing up with so many voices around. But you need those outlets, right? That's really interesting. I resonate with some of that too, on the kind of rowdier, like older siblings, taking up attention, needing a little bit more support, maybe getting into trouble sometimes. And so as like the youngest, you're just like, well, I can take care of myself. And there's something valuable there, I think, as well, in being able to kind of, you have more freedoms to kind of figure yourself out. And I think that's actually like a plus when like the pressures are not always there. You're just kind of like, I'm figuring it out. Yeah.
And it's good to have, like, your siblings there. There are other ways, like, I feel like I'd work the system, right? It's like, all right, I want a $100 pair of shoes. If I get $20 from each one of them,
Yeah.
so like you found different ways to, like, navigate them. And, it's just, I remember doing that. I'm like, oh, if I just put this plan together, and they don't know that I actually, each of them for $10 to get something, like, I could easily get $50. So I definitely took advantage.
Oh, 100%. 100%. My sister was like, I want to go out with friends. My parents would be like, you have to take your brother. So, and that I did not like. When, like, and I don't know if you were in that situation or if any of your siblings were, but, like, I was that annoying little brother that, like, my sister had to take with her if she wanted to go hang out with her friends. So I would just be there with, like, my, like, I don't know, like, iced mocha or whatever, like, in the corner, like, chilling while she's, like, hanging out with her friends on the side, and I'm just, like, her chaperone. It's crazy to think about now. I feel so bad for my sister, but there are some perks that come with that. Definitely not, ashamed of all of those perks that come with that. 'Cause also being a youngest sibling is hard. Because your siblings make you tough, and I don't know, maybe the age differences. My sister is the second one after me. She's 5 years older than I am, and my brothers are like 7 and 8 years older than I am. So there's still a bit of that kind of, like, child dynamic where we'd fight. But I think it makes you a better, more independent, stronger person to be the youngest child.
It's like I experienced everything at home. So when I got to the world, it was like 99% of it I've already encountered at home. So, like, I'm prepared.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're like, oh, like, someone's giving me a little bit of a hard time. All right, that's home. in like a nice way, not in, like, a bad way. Yeah. I think there's something really fascinating about that. We could keep talking about that if we wanted to, but I want to know, when you first started kind of thinking about your kind of career options and your trajectories, there was an interest in finance, maybe Wall Street, thinking about going into some of that space. And then at a certain point, you did pivot to marketing early in college. And I want to ask you, what prompted that pivot as you look back and think about that shift in college?
Yeah, so back in high school, and even from what I recall, I had, like, I did love to read. I was also really good with numbers, like algebra and stuff. It wasn't until I got to a certain part where I'm like, okay, this is kind of hard. But I did love and have a love for numbers. And so finance was one of the first kind of professions that, I learned about in school. And so, when looking to apply to colleges, I knew that there was a really good accounting finance school called Bentley University in Waltham, just a short drive away. And so I actually applied early action because I'm like, if I get in this school, I'm going to go. Because I also, before I applied, I had visited the campus, and they were, doing the tour. They're like, yeah, we have one of the only live trading rooms. And it's like, you step in the door and you see the trading rooms and the stock tickers. You're like, wow, I would get to work in here. It's like kind of a simulator of Wall Street. So from that moment, I was sold. I was like, yep, this is where I'm going to go, and this is what I'm going to do. And so I applied and ended up getting in early action. So, didn't really have to make any other decisions with other schools. And so, yeah, I get to campus and, start taking classes. And one of them is just like an accounting class. And I nearly failed it. I almost didn't make it. And so at that point I was like, okay, maybe this isn't the career for me. It's like, I like numbers, but when you start to kind of put the story behind the numbers, where, like, I was just doing numbers. And when you're doing accounting, there's a lot kind of more kind of rules, regulations, and things that go with that. I'm like, okay, this is not what I thought it was going to be. And so I then, realized that I'm going to have to, like, change my major. And so I discovered marketing because I love how it has a mix of, there's still numbers involved. Even, like, I work in sales now, right? So, like, basic math, or even, some basic percentages, profit margins, like, there's some basic, math calculations that are involved in marketing, and they are used to inform creative decisions. And so it also was allowed me to input my creative side, of the reading. I got to take more literature classes. I got to take a creative writing class on top of, some of the basic marketing classes. So once I found marketing, it for me, it was the perfect fit. It was like, I don't have to completely abandon my love for numbers, but I can apply it in a different way that actually fuels my creativity, which turned out being the perfect major for me in terms of how I apply it today in my professional life.
I think that's really interesting. Do you feel like your childhood, like that curiosity or maybe kind of like a desire to find your own spaces as a child influenced the way that you were then kind of pursuing those career options in college?
Yeah, because it was a mix of putting the knowns together to get me to a happy place, right? 'Cause I knew the known was numbers, but when I tried that, it wasn't quite happy, right? I always do this like mind, body, spirit alignment where like, okay, mentally or like, these numbers are hard, but like, yes, my spirit feels like I want to do this, but then it's like, this is hard. I like to get to a place where all three of us are aligned, right? Like my body, my mind, my spirit, we're all in the same place. And that's kind of where I find like, okay, this is the area I need to be in because I'm fulfilling all these things in multiple ways. But yeah, it's starting with the knowns, what you like. And so it's like, I didn't have to completely abandon numbers. So the fact that marketing still encompassed that, checked that box for me. But in addition, it kind of took it to the next level by like adding the marketing and the creative piece and learning all the aspects of how marketing works. And then there's the people aspect in there, right? Going back to sports and having teammates and siblings and, being able to build great relationships. It all kind of just consumed into this one thing, which was marketing. And even at the time, I didn't know what I was going to do with that degree, right? I didn't know. At that time, I was like, oh, I'm going to be a marketing director. I didn't know what I was going to do with the degree. I just knew at that moment it was the perfect match of my skill set, my passion, and things that I love and I feel like I was good at doing. And so I was like, right now, this is the path for me. It just felt like confirmational once I got on that path.
Yeah, I love the words that you're using to express that journey and kind of the alignment that you were pursuing, because hearing you talk about it now, it like totally makes sense. It's like, oh, like you were looking for an alignment. You had all of these like lived experiences that taught you so much around like people management, working in these environments, a desire to work within numbers and kind of apply some of those skills. And so, of course, this is the natural kind of like place for you. But it's not very evident at the time when you're trying to figure it out, is it always?
No.
Yeah.
Even to make it worse and more terrorizing, because I'm taking marketing at a predominantly finance accounting school, a lot of my friends who are finance and accounting majors, they're locking in jobs sophomore year. Like the big four are recruiting them already. They're like job set up, ready to go. And like I did 4 different internships each year, all within marketing. But even at graduation, I had not secured a job. And a lot of my friends who took the path of finance marketing, they already had their jobs, great salaries lined up. So there was kind of a slight horror there at graduation. I'm like, what am I about to do? What kind of role am I going to get? But, thankfully, there was, I'll talk about I met a recruiter from a retailer at graduation, and literally she was like, we're hiring for a store manager, our manager in training program. Would you like to apply? And I'm like, you asked me this 2 years ago, I would have been like, no, because I have a marketing degree and I'm meant to do this. And so, but at that point it was very like, okay, you're here, you found me, I don't have a job. I would, this is something to try. It's management experience. And why not? And so that's kind of how I started in the retail space, but
yeah. Well, and that's like, I think that's really, it speaks to like your grit and determination, because like you knew this is what you wanted to pursue. And when you figured it out, even though you were kind of facing, this maybe temptation or just like understanding that folks that had this more like clear-cut trajectory were already kind of securing their pathways, you were still betting on yourself, right? And that is really commendable. I also think that there's something, I'm going to go back to this younger sibling thing. I think that there's something about like you are so hyper aware of the environment that you're in because you're seeing so many other people kind of go through their own trajectories a little like ahead of you, where you kind of start to become hyper attuned to like what you want and the kind of things you want once you're kind of released out into the world. Especially when you're such an independent kid and you're kind of managing yourself. And it makes that makes it harder for you to not try to go after exactly what you want.
Exactly. Yeah. I tell people this all the time, like, do not compare. Everybody's journey is going to be different. Those moments, like you use them as like to be more secure about where you are and what it is that is for you, right? You may not be able to name it at that time, but like you just have to know that everybody's journey will look different. And as long as you're, making progress, daily, day by day, whatever it is, but like your journey is going to be unique. And at that time, yes, I could have, been like, oh my gosh, like all these people have this stuff. I knew that I made the right decision, right? I never questioned my decision. Like I should have just, if I just kept my major, I would have had a job. But I realized like and even growing up, like having a job and like, prioritizing money just wasn't how I set my life up. I always been like, follow your dreams, follow your passion, and the money will follow. And so it's like on that path, it's like, I may not see where I'm going to be at 5 years from now, but I know that like I'm on the path. And if I trust the path, I'm going to be okay. So I just think it's so important for people not to compare, other people's journeys to theirs. Because your own, and at any point you could leapfrog, all it
That's
takes
right.
is one moment, one client, one opportunity, whatever it is to happen. It's just in that waiting period, especially for me, it was more of preparation. Like what areas can I prepare so that when this opportunity comes to me, I'm ready and I feel confident in going forward with it. And that doesn't have to be necessarily, related to work specifically. It could just be myself. Like, how do I work on my people skills? How do I, work on, presenting and being comfortable with speaking? How do I learn new words? Like there are just so many ways you can self-improve without, having to like learn a completely new skill set to efforts to get one specific job.
Yeah, 100%. You also worked while in college. You worked your way through school, which is super commendable. I also did. And you were working 3 different jobs. Was that simultaneously or was that like spread at the same time?
At the same time, yeah. So I was before school. They're all part-time, but I was at CVS. I was working in the photo department. I love that job. So I was at CVS closer to where my home was. So maybe 2 or 3 days out of the week, I would work like the night shift. Like after class, I'd do like a 5 to 11 p.m. shift 2 or 3 times a week. I also had a work study job, and I landed it in the library. Me being a reader, best job ever.
Nice.
So love that job as a circulation assistant. So there I just managed, I was at the front desk, helping people check in, check out books. Also, going around and, making sure the books are in place and finding ones that weren't. Like, I just find that stuff so like soothing. And just, again, being around books for work is like great. And I was at the library, was circulation assistant. And then the third job, that one changed. So that one was always an internship. So like I said, each year I had an internship. So at like Hill Holiday. And so like, another one was this like local beauty company. She was, she had her product in Whole Foods and she was trying to strategize, how to grow it and do all this stuff. And so they were, paid internships. So I said it's a job, but those would rotate. I was at one for a couple of years and then 2 different other internships throughout those years. But CVS and the library were my main, part-time jobs throughout school.
Were you tired? I know it's a simple question. Yeah.
I also like, I can go into grind mode and like, I'm very good at like understanding it's a short period of time. I don't think I would have been able to do it if my mindset was that this is going to be the rest of my life, right? This is like, I'm doing this and I need to knock this out so I can get through school. But I also like, I'm into the system of rewarding myself. So like, I still got to, go to some college parties and hang out with friends and do the things. So, and because they were part-time, like I could call out or find somebody to, cover my shift if it was something I really wanted to do. It wasn't like, super grindy, like hardcore, but I did do it, right? Because I did need the money to, for my books, my bills, like my cell phone, my car note, like I still needed the money for things. But again, it wasn't like, I still found a way to enjoy college life to the best that I could with the time that I had.
I'm gonna talk about something embarrassing that happened to me. I tried to do that, and that's why I'm asking. Is it like, were you tired? Because I don't think, unless you are someone that is working your way through school, by the way, disclaimer, working your way through school in the last 10 years is very different than like working your way through school 25 plus years ago, where you needed a summer job to get through the whole academic year. Now, if you're doing that, you need to work a lot, because it's so much more expensive. The summer after my freshman year, I stayed in the city. I was an RA I was working at a local nonprofit as a programs assistant, and I was working at a restaurant all at the same time. I would work 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. at the front desk, so the whole night, and try to take a nap at the desk. And then these were like the 2 or 3 days that were really difficult during the week. And then I would go to the nonprofit from like 9 to 2 or something, and then go to the restaurant. So sometimes I would work consecutively for like 30 plus hours, and I could not do it. I could not. I actually remember one day I went to work at the nonprofit. Very good friends with the president and CEO of the nonprofit now. She is still a great mentor and friend of mine. But I went to work one day, and I'm pretty sure I was mumbling to myself, sleep deprivation. And she came up to me and she was like, "Are you okay? Like, are you taking something?" And I was like, "No, I'm just tired." And that was for me my signal of like, you need to cut back. You can't do this. You got to figure out another way. Yeah. So like, kudos to you. Yeah. Juggling that is not easy. Yeah. But you know what? Go ahead. No,
I was just saying I think the part that was helpful was like being in the library is able to do homework while working per se. I think CVS was the only one that kind of had me like, I had to be on my feet and like, paying attention. And so like, I think the one at the library truly helped me because it's kind of like I can do both. And I'm also a night owl. So like, I'm one of those people where like, I can get back at 11 and like, all right, I'm going to eat something for an hour, maybe watch a little TV and like decompress a little bit, then do some work from like, midnight to 3 or something like that. And then, but I would always plan my week out. So like I'd have like a sleeping day, right? Like, okay, well, I have night class this day. So like, I did a good job of managing all the things so that I didn't burn myself out. And I think that was the important part. Like, again, I was trying not to be like grind. It was kind of like supplemental funds, right? To like help me with, my basic needs and things of that sort. But yeah, and they were shorter shifts, right? Like I was trying to do about 4 or 5 hours in a shift, and I'd kind of break it up. So it's like, okay, I'd have to go to class. And sometimes I'd cram a lot of classes, and there would be certain days where like, these are just class days. Like I'm not working on these Tuesdays and Thursdays, but Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I'm going to do, so just playing around with the time to make sure it like, was best for me. And I was able to build in rest and naps and things like that. It was very important.
That makes total sense. Much better time management skills. It is, but what's interesting about that is all of those things set you up for success in the future, because that's not, I don't know, there are a lot of folks that go to college and they are able to not have to think about working. And so like all of that, it's just, in my opinion, it's not maybe necessarily the most fun in the moment, but it is like a true skill building. And I super love that about any of the folks that we work with when I'm seeing that they have like, like service experience, or just like have had like, a job like out there where they're grinding. It's like, that's commendable. That's a skill. And so really, really, I just wanted to kind of dive into that a little bit. I want to, my next question here is, so there's obviously some transferable skills there. Is there one that stands out to you the most from that experience with those 3 different jobs, or in navigating all of them? Like what's like a bigger takeaway that you've taken from that experience?
Yeah, that's absolutely where my work ethic came from. My ability to like grind something out like came from that period, and like my ability to do so and still maintain good grades, right? To me, that says it's possible. And even you brought it up for me. I didn't realize it was that, like, time management, right? I'm now realizing like I do a good job of my calendar, and making sure and set myself up like how it shows up now is like if I'm traveling, for work or for personal, whatever, like even that day after, like certain thing, like I'm not taking any calls like on this day, like I need that day to recover. I don't care what kind of call it is. Like I cannot do it that day. I need this to recover. But then when I'm recovered, I'm like hitting the ground running. Right. So I understand myself very, very well. And that has allowed me to, do everything. And I really do encourage people to like spend time with yourself and like know yourself really well. You can ask me anything and I can tell you what I will do, what I won't do, and what I'm willing to try. right? Like roller coasters. I'm not doing it, right? I've tried it, right? I don't like it. I don't like the feeling of my stomach dropping. Not going to do it. But what I will do, I will go with you to Six Flags, right? I will watch your things. I will make sure you're get down. I will be there when you
Listen, a bag holder friend is a good friend to have.
Yeah. And so sometimes like, we're in a larger group, there's like newer friends who don't know me as well. And they're like, oh, come on, just get on. But my friends who know me, they're like, she's not getting on. Like, I'm like, yeah, you can't sway me. Once I know it's something I'm not going to do, I'm not going to do it. But I'm still supportive and, still want to show up in the way that I can. I'm always offer an alternative, right? It's like, I can't do this, but I can help you with this. This is where I can meet you at. And so, I think through those experiences of like working, like all those things help me learn myself and like, if there is a day I'm like really, really tired or like I know I have a test coming up and I know I worked late the night before and I didn't do great on that test, I'll say, okay, I can't do that again. No more night shifts before, this type of test or quiz. I continue to learn from those things. One piece of feedback I received from a manager before is that she's like, April, you never make the same mistake twice. And I was like, that is so true. And that is why. And so, cause it helps me learn myself and know like what I need in order to make myself successful and create the environments where I can flourish, and not rely on kind of external factors to do that for me. They're just kind of boundaries that I help put in place to like help me do that. But in order to do that, I need to learn myself. So all these experiences in so many ways help me know like what I like, what I don't like, what I might want to try, how I would react to certain things, how to engage with different other types of people. Like I learned all the things from being in those roles because it exposes me to so many people, students at the library, local customers at, CVS and, working directly with the CEO at my internships and stuff. So it's like, I've just been exposed to all these different environments and I'm observing, right. And I'm processing. I'm applying to me specifically in terms of what I need, like, and desire.
Yeah. I love the words that you used, learning yourself. I think it's so important to recognize that like everyone works a little differently and you have to, we talk about this as a team, know how to play to your strengths, and know how to build support around maybe your weaknesses, or where you're not as strong. And I think that's one of the things that actually, like, as a team, we manage really well. We kind of understand where each of us needs a little bit of support. And that, like, when you figure that out and you're not in an environment where you're constantly asking people to deliver or build on where they're not the strongest, you are able to do so much more as a team in such a healthier environment. And so I love the way you're phrasing that, learning yourself, because that is such a value add as you're navigating life and career. Shortly after graduation, you moved to Atlanta. Coincidentally, your parents were moving there as well around the same time, and you landed one of your first corporate space jobs at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. You helped define a brand new account manager role while you were there, and even closed on a $1 million plus deal. Amazing. How did you step into that leadership space so early? Let's start with that question.
Yeah. So when I first got to Atlanta, so at this time I left retail. I was in Boston, working in a retail store as I did the manager and training program, became a manager, assistant manager, then manager. And so I got sick of eating in the food court. I was like, I didn't go to school. Like after about a year, I was just like, this isn't it. This isn't what I want to do. I was great at it. And I had accumulated so many great skills, right? Like managing, timesheets, counting the registers down. I'm like doing inventory management. I'm like dressing the models. Like I'm doing all these things, again, more skill sets that again can be reapplied to different places. And even just like overall managing a store, it is managing experience. But I did get to the point where I was like, okay, I'm ready for what's next. And so at that point, I'm like, okay, I let me go where my parents are, right? Because that's my safe space. Every time I would get out there, I'm like, okay, I need home. But home at that time had moved to Atlanta. So I went home, and started, the search again to apply for, a more corporate position. And I landed this internship at this startup. And the woman who, found me in Atlanta through this interviewing process, she recognized my school. She's like, oh, you went to Bentley. And I was like, how do you know Bentley? You're all the way in Atlanta. And she's like, oh, I guess she was from the area, but came in and got the internship. So again, a step back, because I went from, even as a store manager making significant money to now back to like, $7 an hour. And I'm like, you know what? It's fine. Sometimes you have to go back to get forward. I was just grateful for the opportunity to be put in a corporate space. And then, that was a startup company. So I had startup experience. And there, what my role was, I was an intern account manager. So the company, they would, they worked with a content management system. So they would get videos from CNN, E! News Online, local television stations. And then we'd also work with the publishers on the sides, like Hearst newspapers and magazines. So if there was a breaking story out of San Francisco and like, okay, SF Gate has a story, we have the video from the local San Francisco station, put this video on the article and we'll run an advertising. And so it's a rev share, right? So the local TV station will get a cut of the revenue. SF Gate will get a cut of the revenue. And then our company will keep the third share. So our goal was video views, right? How many videos can you get up on these articles? And so again, coming into that, new skill set, but I realized what the goal was, right? It's video views, and how can I support? What role do I play in helping us achieve this role? So quickly, went from intern to full-time, like account manager, and then, senior account manager and things of that sort, into owning my own accounts and being able to travel to the newsrooms and teach them, how to properly embed video. It's like, okay, we have click to play, we have scroll to play, we have, auto play. So all these things, and, that kind of got the experience started in the, I would say publishing world. So from there, someone reached out about an opportunity at the AJC. And again, a lot of the opportunities find me, weirdly enough. I haven't had to do any heavy searching for.
I don't think there's anything weird about that. I think it's the energy you put into the universe.
I believe it. It's sometimes hard to say it with someone who's actually struggling to like find work and things of that sort. So I think I do feel sometimes like, I don't know, it's kind of hard to say, but it is my journey, right? It is my truth. That, a lot of the opportunities that I have, like someone has like found me some way, shape or form, maybe through a friend or a referral, they found me and then I pursued it and it ended up landing. So someone found me, a headhunter, to come to the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, which made sense because I was already working with large publisher sites on this video. And so when they came to me with the opportunity, they framed it as, right now they have like sales assistants that are more, clerical. They'll book, if it's a print ad, they'll like schedule the print ad and make sure, the creative is ready. But they were looking to try pilot an account manager role. And I'm like, of all my experience, this is something I know how to do. Like I've just been doing this and I know, as long as I know the goal, I can figure out how to get there. And so, I enter the role, take a few weeks to just like kind of map the scene out, right? It's a new environment. Instead of just video, I'm working with print ads. I'm working with, programmatic, like all types of ads and SEO and search, all the types. And so getting the lay of the land, but they're a heavy print at the time. And so I knew very quickly I was assigned to, some account executives, and I will credit them, some of the best account executives I've ever worked with, still in touch with some of them today. I've learned so much just from going on calls with them. But what I realized when I would start going on the calls, I'm like, okay, I need to figure out a way that can keep you out in the field, getting the money, closing the deals. And I will be making sure once they're signed, I want to make sure they're in my care, they're okay. I can handle, working with them to get the creative together. I can work with them to get the, scheduling booked or ads booked. I can work with them on the messaging, like any reporting, anything else besides like selling. You can trust me with this account and I will do that. And what that led to was starting to be like upsells, right? Where they're like, hey, your campaign's going to end on this date. And they're like, oh no, it did so well. Like, how do we keep this going? Great. I'm glad you asked. Like, here's how you do it and here's how much it's going to cost. And so getting in there and like figuring that out, of building that structure of like keeping the sales executives out selling and being trusted with whatever they brought in, that it would be nurtured and renewed and treated with care. And if there was an issue or something coming up, that's when you bring them back in, like, hey, this is what's going on. So that transparency and honesty also helped as well. But even in nurturing that client, you're building a relationship, right, with those people. You're talking to them or you're emailing them, if not every day, once a week. You're checking in, you're reporting, you're like, hey, things are going well, here are some metrics. And so you start to build that relationship with them. And I've encountered this often where, it's time to, end, or they're not signing something, like, oh, well, we're going to move you to another account. And you're like, no. we want to keep April. So they, will come back on. So yeah, so all that to say, I was able to get in and create value and realize what needed to happen and what the function of the account manager was to keep business coming in, and being nurtured and kept, right? Because one thing to bring business in, if it's not being renewed or there's a big drop off, there's kind of no point bringing in new things. So my core role was to focus on crafting what that looked like for an account manager, and then helping them hire and grow the team. I believe we're up to 7 or 8 by the time I left that company. But yeah, it was a great time. It was sales. Got to go out on calls, and again, even being with those account executives, listening to them, and taking notes and knowing everything. Slowly but surely, they started to push me to the front. They're like, "All right, April's gonna run today's call," and I'm like, "Okay." I knew the information, but I just, my shyness showed up, where it's like, I just like to do good in the background. I just, I like to do this, but yeah. So all that to say, ended up helping them figure out what that account manager role, proving the value of the account manager, specifically tying it to revenue and upsells and resales. And then, yeah, being able to help them grow the team before I left, and, being a voice of, who was to be hired next, and interviewing, helping with the interview process to make sure it's the right type of people and they understood, what it meant to be an account manager, even though it was a new role, but how it was done here in terms of what had worked for us.
That's such a beautiful story when I think about the leap of faith that you took to say, I'm stepping away from managerial, level work in a space where, again, your alignments are not all there, to pursue this kind of newer space where I think that I can find these alignments. And the way that you're talking about it, it seems as though you really blossomed and grew into that space. And I have a question around mentorship. Were there any mentors that really served you well as you were then moving into that space and finding that way to blossom? What was your relationship there with folks in the industry?
Yeah, so I never had an explicitly named mentor, but just colleagues that I would learn from. And like I mentioned, those account executives who kind of took me under their wing. Some account managers weren't going out on calls, but I had the opportunity to do that and kind of see for myself and just watch them watch. So I've always said I love being in sales, but I never wanted to be the sleazy salesperson. And so I was I don't want to sell you this broken down car. If you come needing a car, what are your requirements? What's your budget? What are you looking for? And I want to find you the best thing within that scope, right? I don't want to push you past what your budget is. And so that way it can kind of, when I present my options, you can easily say this one. I was never really a big pusher, right? I want you to walk into, what you need and, at the rate that it is presented at. And so I would see that happen a lot, where the account executive would be talking and just we can, we have the ability to do this, this, and that. And they're like, great, sign me up, versus the pushy sales. So I did learn a lot from being out on those calls with those account executives. And they also were the top sellers of the company too. So again, I've just always had this opportunity of being aligned to top performers. And that we're able to have great working relationships with, right? Because I come at it with, I'm here to learn and support and help. I'm not trying to take your job. I don't want to do anything beyond your job. I am here to support you. So I'm here observing, looking. I know that my spiritual gifts are giving and helping, right? So when it comes to help, I when I get somewhere, it's map out all your what are all your gaps? And then my ability is to look at all the gaps and be I can help you with this. This I can take on. And when I take it, I feel confident about it and I'm able to deliver. And so that is how I'm able to kind of plug in. And it can look in different ways in different places. But yeah, so I would say they're, even at Google, like my account executive's there, my manager there. Like I've just truly been blessed to have like great teammates, colleagues, and managers, and account executives in the space that I've just been able to just even being on calls with them, just learn and take in so much. That, and then they serve as I would say they serve as a mentor. Kind of post as we like catch up, like, hey, what are you up to these days? And we just like reminisce on some stories. But yeah, I've never had an explicitly named mentor. I think I've tried to do that or get one, but it feels so weird. Like, hey, can you be my mentor? And it's like I don't know what that relationship involves. Like, do we meet weekly? Do we like monthly? And what do I tell you things? So I've just kind of I would refer to all the people that I've been able to work with and learn from as many mentors in my life.
Right, like a community.
A community, yeah.
Yeah. I kind of see it that way as well. I don't know if I've ever asked anyone explicitly, like, will you mentor me? Because I don't know what that looks like either, but there are definitely people in my life that I know that I go to when I have a question, who I trust or I kind of want their opinion. And a lot of that is actually kind of the root around our work at Zeta. But I do want to kind of get into some of the conversation around your work with actually some folks, partners that we've had in common. But before that, it sounds like because of your nature around kind of wanting to be supportive in helping people both identify their problems, identify kind of the work that they need done, and then wanting to lean into like specifying where you can be of service and support, it was very natural for you to build out an entrepreneurial venture during your time in Atlanta by launching BookedBag. So I had a question around like, what was that like? And what was it like to kind of build out a side business while doing this work? But it seems very organic. It seems like you had this capacity to support and identify, and that translates really well into that like entrepreneurial venture. Is that pretty fair to say?
Yeah, no, it is. And so it did start at the AJC. There was a informal book club going on. And I wanted like, I don't know what book they had, but they were kind of halfway through. But someone who had already read it was like, I read it, like, you can borrow mine. And at the time I was taking the train into work. And so as you can imagine, after a couple weeks of the book being in like my tote bag with my lunch, water bottle sweats, the book was not in the condition in which she and so I felt so embarrassed for her. I just bought her a new one. I didn't even show her. Like I was like, I need to get you a new book. And then so I'm like, okay, if I'm, because by that time, let me just add a little bit more context. Like during school, like I'm reading for school. And then once I started working, like work kind of took over. So I kind of, not that I lost my love for reading, but I didn't get to read as much. I didn't have more opportunities to read. So that kind of fell off. So I got very excited about this book club. I'm like, oh my gosh, an opportunity to like read more. And it's in a work environment. Like this is great. And so, bought her a new book. And then I went on this search. I'm like, since I'm going to be in this book club, like, let me find a book cover because I'm taking a train and I don't want this to happen again. The idea of not making the same mistake twice, right? So I'm like, I need to find something. And so I went on to look for what I was looking for. And what I realized is a lot of the book sleeves and covers, they still leave an opening. Like they'll cover the front and back of the book, but the pages are still left for exposure. And I'm like, so even if I did buy this case, like it would still, the same thing would happen to the pages. And so I'm like, in my head, I'm already envisioning, I'm like, I need something with front and back flaps, and then a zipper component that can fully enclose it. And then I went from there because I'm like, when I read, like I like to bring my phone, and like if I'm going to Starbucks, I normally have to bring like a small bag to keep my cards in, my phone and things of that sort. I'm like, what if I can just make this protector like a one-stop reading shop, right? Like what if inside the book protector, I could have a slot for a phone, my cards, and I could just zip it up and just take it with me, on my reading trip. And so the idea sparked, and I've been close friends with both of my co-founders since middle school in Boston. And you always wonder, like, why certain relationships, continue, or people are still around you after all these years. And very specific people, right? And so I'm like, she makes things. She's always, like, she made her clothes when we were in school. Like, she is a fashion designer. Like, she has the ability to do this. So I, like, call her and I'm like, hey, like, I have this idea, like, and I'm like kind of explaining it to her, and she actually came up with the name. She's like, you can call it BookedBag. I know exactly. Like, and she, put a sketch together, and I'm like, yes. And then from the sketch, she like, helped me get like a first, iteration of it done. And then from there, made some tweaks, and then we put in our first order for like 50 of them. And I was like, but even getting that far and doing that was just so rewarding. Because like I said, even growing up of like that creativity space of like creating worlds that didn't exist, this was the first time I was able to put something into tangible being of something in my head, and also a solution to something that I personally was trying to solve, that then was like, oh, other people need this too. And so that's how it started. It just started with like, oh, I'm going to make like, 50 of them, and just like, mainly using them for me, but like just see if like other people like them or need them. But yeah, I sold the first 50 in the office at work. And so I was like, okay, maybe I do have a business here. So that's essentially, how it started. But yeah, I think the biggest rewarding part for me was just getting it from my head into like a physical product. That alone was just so rewarding, and like confirming it just forces me to think more creatively. But yeah, it just, yeah, no, that's it. Like it helps me. Like those are the things that fuel me and I get passionate about, of like, yeah, no, anything is possible, right? In my head. I'm like, if you can think of this and actually get it out into a product, and then now that's part one. Part two is like people like it, and like they see a need for it too. Like, and then you start hearing like customers like, oh my God, like I didn't know this existed, and like this is so amazing. Like, and I'm like, wow, like the fact that I was able to like solve a problem, right? And like act on it and do it and make something tangible. That alone was just very rewarding for me. So I never from the onset was like, oh, I'm going to make this $1 million product and I'm going to sell it. And like, there was never no major plan for it. It was very much like there was a need. I saw it, I made it, and I saw a need for other people too. And so like, it just, my thing was like being the inventor, right? Like, it's like, oh yeah, I was able to like create something unique to me.
And that's really beautiful. One, because I truly believe that once the entrepreneur bug has bitten you, like it never really leaves. You're always kind of like, you always have that. And it's beautiful to hear that like you have that spirit. But two, taking something from like thought to like true product is like one of those purest forms of manifestation. And it is so rewarding to see that. So rewarding. And so I think that's really wonderful. It's incredible and also they're super stylish. And so we will definitely be plugging those into the episode so people can check them out. I think that'll be awesome. So now I want to move into talking about some of your work with partnerships that we actually share. We work with some of these folks, and so excited to hear about some of the amazing things that you've done there as you saw your work blossom and kind of bloom in this marketing space, April, if that's okay with you. So you eventually moved on to Google and YouTube, working for two of the largest companies in tech, helping them manage large-scale advertising clients, and eventually having the enormous responsibility of running campaigns that connected brands with creators in the space. How did those experiences help you overcome maybe imposter syndrome, or just broadly step into your confidence with this work? Because you really went from kind of like taking a leap of faith here to being where some would argue is kind of like the peak, right? And so really curious to know, like, how did you step into that with confidence?
Yeah, so I didn't. Imposter. I was like, oh, no, what
you did. I didn't. See, but that's crazy because you had such a trajectory that I would imagine you walking into that room like, if there's anyone that's worked for this and like has built the experience to be here, it's me. Mm-hmm. And so it's like it's very like real to say you didn't. So tell us about that.
Yeah, because it's the size of the company. So, while I was at AJC, I was there for 3 or 4 years. Worked my way up, built the team out, got to a position where they created a new role for me, which I believe was like a senior account manager. But with this role, I would be more pre-sale versus post-sale, because I had expressed, I'm like, all right, I've nailed down this process for post-sale. I want to learn something new. I want to go on more calls and be a part of these large deals that are coming in, and, giving my support on the pre-sale side in efforts to close, how we landed the $1 million deal. So I started to do that work, like doing the pre-sale stuff. we got a large client. And again, it took a long time to get this client, on board. And so through that process, building the relationship. So when the big deal closed, I was asked to then go back into a post-sale capacity. I was like, no, it's a big account. We don't want to lose them. But for me, it's like that's hinting my growth, right? Yes, this is closed, but we can trust to move it on to someone else. But like, I need to continue doing this pre-sale stuff in order to grow myself. And so, it was like, after, a few months, like we'll hand it over. But by that time, I was, high levelly looking at different roles. Someone had sent me a Google role for Boston, actually. I was like, oh, would you move to Boston? And I was like, I look in the side and I was like, oh, they have one like in Atlanta. And so I was like, click. And I applied. Again, no referrals, like no, just my resume and the work that I was doing there. And a week later, I got a call from a recruiter and I was like, hello. And they're like, yeah, this is, so-and-so from Google. I was like, no way. So literally like just, straight through 7 rounds later, ended up landing the job. So, but it was good because even that process was, a bit grueling. I had found a new church home and I'm like, this is meant to be, I hope it is. But there was also this like kind of thing along the way of like, I don't feel as qualified just because of the size of the company, right? Like I'm going from a local newspaper to a large tech conglomerate. And I think that's where the confidence kind of wasn't as certain because of the size of the company. And so, fast forward, landed the job. And then, I start and I am, the account manager managing $40+ million a quarter. So it's like, here we go, like ringing, bells and deals for like, our first $1 million deal. And now I'm like, fast forward to, a few weeks later and it's like, yeah, now you're in charge of, $40 million a quarter. And I'm like, that's where the imposter comes in, right? Because you're like, oh, how did I get here? And then again, this is specific to Google search. So you're expected to be an expert, in this role at this job. And so I think where the imposter really hit was I had a client. They weren't the friendliest, but I had direct feedback that like, hey, we spend millions of dollars. We deserve an expert account manager. And this is like week 2 for me. So I'm like, oh no, I'm not meeting their needs. And, I've always been, good at what I do. And, that's been confirmed from other people. But to hear that directly from a client, like it just like immediately made me like, okay, I gotta, back into work mode. So I started, I would stay up all night, almost a week, trying to go through every, Google module there was to learn, right? I'm like, I gotta be an expert if I'm gonna be a job. Ran myself through the wall. Like I showed up one morning right before one of our like client meetings and I just cried. I don't know why I was crying. I was just like, I don't know, like tears just started rolling. Like it wasn't a boohoo cry. I was just like looking at the presentation, just tears just started rolling down my eye. But it was probably because I was sleep deprived, the imposter stuff, the feedback just playing back in my head. Like I deserve an expert account manager. And I knew I wasn't there, right? Like I couldn't confidently go into that and be like, I am an expert account. I knew there was a knowledge gap, right? Like I could do the other account management things, but there was a knowledge gap and a time gap because I had just started. And so, thankfully I was able to work through that period of time and, navigate another way to get the people who report to him to build a relationship with them. And, kind of work it that way. We were doing some testing so that when we were presented, it's like, hey, this is what we worked on. This is what we did, kind of buying trust that way. And over time, it did get better. And there were still some hiccups, but again, over time, it got better. And I would say after that situation, then I felt untouchable. I felt like I could achieve anything. I could do anything. Nothing can affect me professionally at this point, because that period of, what would have been a quarter or two, that span of me trying to become this expert account manager for this client, they have millions of dollars. Once I got over that and gained the trust, like at that point, I was like, okay, I can literally do anything.
That is, there's something to unpack there because hypothetically speaking, the alternative, if you didn't have that experience on week 2, which by the way, not fun. But if you didn't have that experience, then where would that wonderful feeling of being untouchable after putting in that hard work have come from? And would it have taken longer to develop? And so maybe I'm the eternal optimist, but I always kind of read my my moments where I feel like maybe there's a setback as, you know what, this is that moment that's hardening me up to like be able to take some of these things moving forward with a lot more confidence. And it I'm not saying like that's good. It's not good that happened. But I do think that there's power in the way you responded to it. And I think that's just like a general rule of thumb for how to approach career situations, but also life. The way that we respond to these difficult moments is really valuable, is really critical. Like it can make us better. And you're a prime example of it in that scenario. And I'm so happy that it worked out in that way, because talk about then like a resiliency. I am not one to ever name names, but very early on to building our organization, I had a couple of encounters where people were like, who are you to do this? Or like you all don't know what you're doing, or what, and little things like that, right? Where you're kind of called out and you're like, oh, maybe I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know if I would thank these people in person today. But I am kind of grateful that I had those experiences early on, because our team and the work that we do today very much is confident, and I think has withstood the test of those questions that have come in. And so attitude, I guess, is what I'll say there. I don't know. Do you agree? Like, yeah, attitude, right? Attitude is key.
Yeah, attitude for sure. And again, it comes down to your basic like problem solving skills, right? Like I never was taught to like quit per se. You know, if I quit, it is very much like, you know, bodily exhaustion or something. You know, if it gets to a point where it's like I've tried everything and it's not working, but like I'm definitely going to run through the different scenarios and try to run different plays to try to get something to work. And so even in this scenario, like I did the things, I was like staying up all night, like going through, you know, all the Google workshops and modules, watching videos and try to like, you know, overlearn. And then I burnt myself out that way. And it's like, okay, that didn't work. Let me try like relationship. Like, let me lean on my relationship management skills, right? Like, let me get to know his team personally. Let me take them out to dinner. Let me, you know, I have the ability to do these things and get them in my good graces. And then they, you know, slowly would tell me little tidbits and arm me with, you know, better ways to, you know, approach that client. So all those things helped. And that essentially was able to get me over the hump. But yeah, I'm one person. I'm going to try a few ways, you know, before I quit. Yeah. And they're all going to be creative. Yeah.
There's a word that keeps coming up in what you're describing for me, and it's courage. Like truly courage, because you walked in the direction of kind of the resistance. And that's really that's courage. That's courageous, which is awesome. As you know, we are a Gen Z focused organization, focused on elevating young perspectives in tech policy, so that we're building a future that is driven by the interests and the perspectives of the people that are inheriting that future. In your space, you've been able to work with young voices that are shaping industry. And I'm curious to know, what are some of the things that you've learned from those young leaders, and what role do you see them playing in your industry moving forward?
Yeah. I would definitely say so. From Google, I took a role at YouTube, specifically working on brand partnerships, branded content, connecting brands with influencers, specifically on the YouTube platform. And so with that, did it allow me to, you know, converse with creators, you know, their agencies, managers, and things of that sort, and also the brand. So I had to kind of toe this gray line, right? Where it's like, yes, the brand has, you know, certain things that need to be in the content, in terms of like, you know, if there's any claims or, you know, talking points. But my job was to translate that to the creator where it wasn't scripted, right? Where it's like, I still need you to show up in your authentic self as if you were, you know, to make this video yourself. Because what I learned, that organic, authentic content does the best when the brand is more organically kind of centered into that content. So I like to look at it as guidelines, right? Where it's like, okay, here are the key points the brand is trying to get across. Say it however you want to. obviously you can't say these specific words, if they're competitors or things of that sort. Like I kind of create the framework, but I would give them the box, but within the box, they can operate however they need to operate, that feels true to them. And so, and then because YouTube, which I appreciate, they are a creator first organization. So when it came to, getting the content back from the creator, the brand could say like, hey, like, I don't like the way they did this, but I have full authority to be like, the only way we can make edits is if it's legal or competitive, brand safety. Those are only things. If you just don't like the way they said something and according to the contract, they've done what they had to do, it's in their authentic voice, that we have to proceed with the content. Or you can, you still have to pay them for the content, but they don't have to launch the content. So just being able to toe that line. But it really empowered me to, working with those influencers of like your authenticity matters. And that's how we get the best content, and you have freedom to do that. And even when I say knowing yourself, like there are so many niches in this space, and the fun part of my job was like finding, having, a tech brand work with a doctor, a creator that's a doctor, right? They're like, what? This doesn't make sense. And I'm like, yes, it does, because he has a team of editors that use this system already to manage their content. So we're in the video, we're able to craft it to where it's like more behind the scenes, right? Like, hey, you see this content all the time, but let me give you a peek behind the hood, and then kind of naturally integrate, that tech product. So that's the fun part, right? It's finding the ties, but it requires these creators and these influencers to be their authentic self. I've even had influencers turn brands down. They're like, I don't like this product. That's fine. Some creators will be like, just for the money, they want to do it. But like, I respect some of those influencers and creators that's just like, this doesn't work for my hair type, or this, has this, it's not, this has something, a chemical in it that I don't agree with, whatever it was, but they would really stick to their values, and which I can appreciate, because it's empowering, right? Because when you come from a world of corporate, it's harder to do that, right? You do have to adjust in certain ways to be in certain rooms, but this next generation of influencers and creators, they have their full right to be their authentic selves and get, paid for it when there is an alignment. And when there's a misalignment, they can boldly say like, no. And like, I love that part, because that it's moving in a way that, and people also, when they follow these influencers and creators, I don't say they look up to them, but they go to them, right? Their recommendations, whatever it is. And so if there are things that these creators are already authentically using, some of these brand deals just make so much sense, right? Like you have a pet that already eats this specific pet food, right? Let's get them to do it, right? And it doesn't feel like cheesy. And then lastly, I'll say like to see the transition from, this is, the comments, right? A creator will launch a piece of branded content and they're like, this is just a big old ad, right? And then to it moving to more comments being like, oh, I see you got that check, like get that paid deal, because they understand that this is a living for a lot of these influencers. It can be a full-time job. And this is them working, but in a respectable way, and hoping that they stick to their core values and turn down deals that don't make sense and only work with the ones that make sense. It can really create a really good synergy and a great way for brands to naturally get in front of large audiences. Yeah.
And there's this hyper awareness, to your point, right? Like the community will catch on and be like, yeah, you're good for you for like getting that sponsorship. Young people will catch on to that, right? Like I think they're very hyper aware of when they're being marketed. And sometimes I gotta like clap, because it's like sometimes there are still these creators that put so much effort into just really staying true to their identity in the partnerships and the collaborations and sponsorships that they're bringing in, that even if they're putting it in front of you like this and they're like, hey, buy this, right? You're still like, yeah, I trust you. And Bretman Rock with his like super luscious hair and that hair roller come to mind. I don't have that kind of hair. And I never thought about buying that hair roller, but like, I trust him. If he says that hair roller works, I know it works. Like he's got amazing hair and he takes care of that hair. So I don't know, like those are the things that come to mind. I wanna talk about something really big that happened to you in 2023, which is you left YouTube and you were kind of faced with this question. You decided to start your own venture. You decided to start SocialSway, and in doing that, you've been deemed the brand whisperer. It's very clear to see why. There's like no question about it. Like you really understand kind of the values and the principles and the organicness of marketing, and so like there's no question as to why, right? Like it totally makes sense. But I'm curious to know what did that pivot feel like for you, and what does that title mean to you?
Yeah. Well, I will start with, it was a forced pivot. It was a part of the large layoffs that Google did back in 2023. So, of course, shock is at first, right? Because even throughout my journey, I had not been laid off. So there were a lot of emotions at the same time, right? It was, slight embarrassment, because at first you don't know why, right? It's like, did I get fired? It's like the word layoff alone is like, what's happening? And then it's like, was it a performance issue? Like, I thought I had great performance. Like, you have all these questions. And then you go into like, who's affected? And then so like, you start getting the calls and the text messages like, are you good? Are you good? And it's like, no, I'm not. But come to find out, it's like the whole department. So then there kind of became a camaraderie around it. Like, okay, they just got rid of, this entire department. So it's all of us, we're on the same boat. And so we were able to like, meet up and talk through that. So yeah, it was the immediate kind of shock factor. But then it's so funny, and it's like I say I need to watch what I say, but I kind of speak it into existence. While I was at Google, I went to a conference and they had like a job floor, and my friend was in the market for a new job. And so I was like, oh, I'll walk around with you. But I was like, given where I'm at, like, I don't know what's next. Like, I don't see myself working for another corporation. Like, I don't know where else to go. Like that feeling of an untouchableness, right? Where it's like, I literally said this out my mouth. I'm like, I don't think I could work for another company after all, after this, like my experience, like I got to do something on my own. Like there's just nowhere else for me to go. And so, walked around with her and stuff, but fast forward to me getting laid off. And then I'm like, okay, like Google has become a part of my identity. Like I had identified myself as a Googler. I spent so much time there. I've learned so much there. It's such a big company because like the minute you say like, oh yeah, I work at Google, everybody's like, oh, you're so smart. And all these things that just come with it. And when that piece is removed, you're kind of left with this empty space in identity. And you're like, okay, I didn't realize that was there until it's gone. And I'm like, okay. So now I have to adjust like, oh, I used to work at YouTube, or I used to work at Google. And that was a transition in itself of like separating my identity from the Google identity. And so, the first month or so passed, and I kind of like took the time. Thankfully, they, took care of us severance wise. It was okay for a few months. So I took some time off and like was like, all right, I want to figure out what I'm going to do. And then I start applying for jobs. Despite what I said before of like, oh no, I don't going to be a corporation. I immediately was like, what I know is I'm going to update my resume and I'm going to apply for jobs. I applied for jobs for a few months and like nothing came through. I did a couple interviews. But even then it never felt right. Like I kind of had this voice in the back of my head of like, you need to, like the entrepreneur bug that never went away. It's like, you start your own thing and do something. But again, I couldn't formulate it because I'd never done something like this specifically before it comes to my main work. I've always had a job. And so, there was a point where one of my clients, that I worked with, did a campaign with YouTube. They had reached out on LinkedIn like, hey, I know you're not at YouTube anymore, but can you still help us run this program? Like we loved working with you and, the results we have, like, can we still do this? Like, do you have the capability to do this? And I'm like, I would figure it out. I didn't tell them that, but I'm just like in my head, I'm like, yeah, we'll figure it out. But again, all these things are working together in the background. Because this also started with when I got laid off, I was contemplating on whether I should post it on LinkedIn. Because like I said, there was a little embarrassment to it. And so I'm like, do I publicize this, right? Or do I kind of work in silence to try to find another role and then announce the new role? And so, but I ultimately decided my spirit was pushed to like post it, think all the people and all the experiences and things. I was like, but you have a good network. So put it out there and see what happens. And the post semi went viral. People started commenting. They started reaching out, random people. And so I didn't have nothing but time. So I mostly took a bunch of calls with them. So I'm like, yeah, let's talk. Let's get coffee. Like, at this point, I'm trying to figure it out. And so through that process, I had learned, I met an attorney who specifically works on influencer marketing contracts. She was doing it for a sports or the NBA. And then another person who has an accounting firm that's local. And I was like, okay, like they do invoices and things of that sort. So when the client reached out, I started thinking back. I was like, oh, it's like I think I have the people I need to at least start. Like I have, my skill set, my processes. I'll have that documented. And I literally ran their campaign before. I have that part. I was more so like, how do I handle the contractor, right? Because I don't have a lawyer. But I'm like, I met this woman. And she does this. And then I'm like, okay, how do I pay the influencers? I'm like, oh, the accounting company, they can do, invoices and creator payments. Like, let me reach out to them. And then all of a sudden it all came together. And I pitched, pitched the campaign with them, and they had actually went and looked at other agencies for this campaign, but ultimately came back to me and said, look, we enjoy working with you. We already know what your work is going to be like, and we appreciate your transparency, because that's one thing I always lead with transparency. I will tell you the truth. And so, that they ultimately, I won the business over, more formulated agencies. And so I was like, I want to do this under a company. I don't want to do this under my name, because this gives me the opportunity to do this for more brands and clients. So that's what ignited SocialSway. So I started that and then took on that first client, and then word of mouth. This was a Web3 client. So then that led to another Web3 client to, where I am now. And so that's just been the trajectory again. Like I tried to, look for jobs and stuff. It just didn't work out for me that way. And this, again, an opportunity came to me. And thankfully I had, taken advantage of these random LinkedIn outreaches to be able to have the resources in order to, facilitate this campaign and get it done. And yeah, take on client. The rest was history from there. I just began to, take on more, again, by word of mouth. And just, being a good person and partner to work with. So.
What a beautiful reputation to have too, that folks were like, we want you, right? Like you were building that reputation. I think that's really wonderful. And also you were stepping into a space with courage, which is one of those things you clearly were putting into practice for a while. Your trajectory has really kind of built off of all of the strengths you've been accumulating over time, which is really, really cool to come to understand. I'm curious to know, for young people that are thinking about starting something, or that have that itch, that kind of gut feeling, what would be your advice to them on starting a business or going after a venture like that?
Yeah, I would definitely say, write down all your ideas. And if there's anything that you is really feeling or pressing on you, action on it. What is the next actionable step you can take? That may not be the end goal, but the next step that will put you towards the goal. And take it step by step, right? There's no need to have launch something in a week. That's not necessary. But what is it? Is it scheduling a meeting with someone? Is it going to a conference to learn more about something? Is it a networking? What are those steps that you can take to get there? And the other note I'll say is, even when I started BookedBag, I had always had a corporate job, and I've always looked at jobs in that way of, someone gave me this example before, but a grocery store, right? You go in with your cart, you shop your aisles, you get the ingredients and things that you need, you put them in your cart and you check out, and you go home and you make those things, right? So similar thinking when you're corporate, you're, collect, right? You're thinking, you're observing, you're learning how to work with different people, you're gaining new skill sets, you're taking all that, and it's not solely for the company you're currently working for, but they're for you. You take those things and you build upon them and you use them towards your dreams. Because you're getting real life experience in a paid space to build dreams, while and help let your corporate job, fund, or at least start the beginning funding for the thing that you want to do. Whether it's using people, resources, learnings, conferences, whatever it is, that the most you can get from your current job, just have the perspective or the scope of in the end, I'm building this for me. And just really using that experience for that. But yeah, that's definitely what I would say. It's it's okay to have a job in something you want to build or something you're building. Use the money, right? And just use the money, the skill set, the resources that are available at that job for you to use, and be able to translate them. And even if it takes you going to another role, if you're like, oh, I need a little bit more technical knowledge, let me try go after this role. But again, the end goal is yourself. Just always remember that you are investing in yourself. I saw a quote today on Instagram that said, you don't need them, they need you. And that just spoke to me because I'm like, that is true. Once you build, the confidence, the experience, the tools, and all the things that you need, you realize like, I am actually helping, these people. I don't necessarily need them, but like they need me in order to solve this business problem or, whatever it is. It is my unique experience in the instances that I've been put there to help with. And so that kind of is like an extra affirmation that just, really, really spoke to me and is important that I think people keep in mind.
Wow. April, it has been incredible speaking with you today and so insightful. I think there's so much here for folks to take away around optimism, courage, resiliency, entrepreneurial spirit. It really, truly is incredible to see the leadership that you've brought to the industry and the disruption of bringing authenticity, which I think then really opens the door for a new generation of marketers. So I think that's really wonderful. It has been awesome talking to you again, and I'm opening the door for any words to close this out that you want to share with folks. But thank you so much for your time today.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. It's been a great talk. So thank you for having me on your platform. Thank you to your team and getting all this situated. This has been a great conversation. Can't wait to see the final result.
Yeah, it will be amazing. We're so excited to have you kick off our season 2. We're going to have a great lineup this season. This was wonderful. April, thank you so much. And for those of you listening, follow, and stay tuned for more episodes coming soon.